And first of all, I'd like to just thank everybody for turning out today. This is an excellent turnout. I'm really, really impressed. I'd like to thank everybody from IPSC and from Éirígí, from Students in Solidarity and every other group who've turned out here today, members, supporters, and people who just happen to be passing by. It's great to see such a good turnout. Today, as you all know, is Palestinian Prisoners Day, April the 17th, and that's why we're here. All over the world, alongside brutal physical oppression and psychological warfare, the imprisonment of members of indigenous communities who resist occupation has always been part of the repertoire of colonial regimes, and Israel is no exception to this rule. As Dahi said, since the beginning of the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza in 1967, over 650,000 Palestinians have been detained by Israel, forming approximately 20% of the total Palestinian population in these areas. At present, as of March 31st, 2010, Israel currently holds 6,631 Palestinian political prisoners in detention. Of those, 15 are members of the Palestinian Legislative Council, 35 are women prisoners, 337 are child prisoners, including 39 under the age of 16. 103 are anti-apartheid wall activists and human rights defenders, people such as Abdallah Abu Rama from bil'in and Ibrahim Amira from Nilin. And 237 of these are administrative detainees, including 3 women and 2 children under the age of 18. Administrative detention is basically indefinite internment without charge or trial. Military commanders can detain an individual for up to 6 months if they have, quote, reasonable grounds to presume that the security of the area or public security require the detention, unquote. Detention can continue indefinitely, and detainees are not informed of the reasons for their detention, nor are their lawyers. A recent example of this was the internment of 2 non-violent anti-apartheid wall resistors, Jamal Juma and Mohammed Othman, who were, it must be said, detained purely for the high-profile nature of their peaceful anti-Zionist activity. Non-violent resistance is a real threat to Israel's apartheid regime at present, as evidenced by the recent spate of deportations and arrests of Palestinians, Israelis and internationals. The most glaring example of this is the new Israeli military order issued last week that will enable mass deportation and large prison sentences for those deemed as infiltrators in the West Bank. Many of you are here today because you may have visited bil'in and taken part in the Friday protests against the apartheid wall, which cuts their village in 2. These non-violent protests have continued and gone from strength to strength for 5 years now, despite Israeli repression such as disproportionate military attacks on protesters, multiple arrests, closed military zone orders, and the death of our good friend Bassam Abu Rama on this day last year. Bassam was shot in the chest at point-blank range by a tear gas canister for the crime of holding a Palestinian flag and protesting the theft of his village's land. We'd like to honour Bassam for all of the good work that he has done, and I'm honoured to see that the Israeli embassy have put their flag at half-mast for killing an innocent Palestinian on this day last year. At this point, I'd like to speak about Bassam's cousin and the legendary bil'in activist Abdallah Abu Rama. Abdallah was the heart and soul of every Friday demonstration. His charisma, stamina and incredibly loud voice enriched the experience of many internationals and Palestinians who protested in bil'in. During my time in bil'in, I and others, including Abdallah, confronted the Israeli soldiers face to face in a peaceful manner. 20 of us were corralled into a small space and repeatedly tear-gassed. We were separated from the large body of protesters because we were right between the 2 sections of fence which were paving the way for the wall to be built. 20 of us were there. We were repeatedly tear-gassed while being corralled. We remained steadfast in solidarity with the people of bil'in. However, when the Israelis began to fire rubber-coated steel bullets at us, it was Abdallah who gave the order to retreat. He stayed behind until he was sure that every member of the group was safely out of harm's way, risking his life for the good of others. Abdallah has now been arrested and detained and charged with illegal arms possession, stone throwing and incitement. The illegal arms possession charge relates to a protest exhibition Abdallah had made out of spent tear gas canisters, much like the one that killed his cousin Bassam Abu Rama, and plastic rubber-coated bullets that the Israelis shoot at protesters. He assembled them in the form of a large peace sign. You can see this display on some of the leaflets that we've been handing out today. The canisters and bullets had been aimed at unarmed demonstrators protesting Israel's separation wall. Both Abdallah and his wife continue to be a motivating and inspiring force behind the resistance in bil'in through her blog and his letters from prison. If convicted of this so-called crime, it must be noted that West Bank Palestinians convicted by Israel are jailed by non-jury Israeli military courts. All West Bank Palestinians are subject to Israeli military law, while Israel's colonial settlers are ruled by Israel's civil law, yet another example of Israel's apartheid system. These courts, biased from the outset, rarely meet international fair trial standards. As a result of their visible political activity, Palestinian women have not escaped mass arrest campaigns either. Women in detention are subjected to daily mistreatment and are often held in cells with Israeli criminal prisoners. Regular body searches are performed with brutality. Sexual harassment is common. The right to elect a representative for their collective demands is not recognised. Solitary confinement is used as a form of punishment. They are prohibited from going outside regularly. Confiscation of personal belongings is common, and attacks by beatings and tear gassings in their cells occurs regularly. Aitmud Muhanna, ex-PFLP member, organiser and activist, was supposed to be here with us today. Aitmud was an organiser and activist in Gaza with the PFLP from 1982 to 1992. Unfortunately, her visa was denied in her attempts to come here. At the moment, she's studying in the University of Swansea and doing a PhD on the social struggles on the ground in Gaza. Aitmud's message that she sent me, just to be read out here, was first and foremost one of solidarity with the activists here in Ireland working for Palestinian rights, and also one of solidarity with all Palestinian prisoners today. While Aitmud was married and living in Gaza, her husband was imprisoned for much of that time, leaving her to carry on their combined campaign work on her own. She also had to rear her 3 children on her own. When she went to visit her husband on many, many occasions in prison, she was subjected to absolutely abhorrent treatment. She had 3 young children. She was often made to wait for hours and hours before being allowed to see her husband. She was denied the right to change her young baby's nappy, of course leading to the child being distressed, and then this leading to further abuse from the prison guards on the site, because of course she was becoming a nuisance herself. This treatment of Aitmud and many, many other people who try to visit their families, friends, husbands and wives in prison is commonplace, but it does not make it any more abhorrent, any more disgusting, any more despicable. I would like to just show our solidarity with Aitmud, and we hope that we will get her here at some point later in the year. The visa application may have been denied this time. It does not mean that we will not try again to bring the woman to this country. We must come to recognise that the EU is complicit in perpetrating Israeli repression of progressive resistance movements in Palestine by deeming most of these groups, including the PFLP and many other left-wing groups, terrorist organisations, and by never holding Israel to account for its blatant breaches of international law and human rights abuses that it carries out on a daily basis. Because of Israeli breaches of Article 2 of the Euromed Agreement between Israel and the EU. This is the Respect for Human Rights clause. Israel should be suspended from this preferential trade agreement. It is our duty to constantly demand of our government that they put pressure to make sure that Israel is suspended from this preferential trade agreement. It is clearly in breach of human rights laws. It is clearly in breach of international law. This cannot go on any longer. For 4 decades of Israeli military occupation, Palestinians from all walks of life have been illegally detained by Israel. The IPSC and Éirígí have called this demonstration as part of the international activities taking place on Palestinian Prisoners Day 2010. As we believe that all Palestinian political prisoners are victims of Israeli colonialism and apartheid. The IPSC therefore demands the release of all political prisoners held by the Israeli state. We also call for an immediate end to the torture and ill treatment that Palestinian prisoners, male, female and child prisoners, face on a daily basis. Free all Palestinian political prisoners now. Free Ahmed Sadat!
Free Ahmed Sadat!
Free Abu Rama!
Free Abu Rama!
Free all political prisoners!
Free all political prisoners!
Okay, sorry to interrupt the chanting, which I'm hoping you're all going to take up in a minute. I've been given the usual couple of announcements. David Rovics is playing a fundraiser gig for the IPSC on the